There's always something that needs a little fixing on Farpoint Farms.
Hey guys, it's Eric, owner of Farpoint Farms, restorations and repairs here in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina. It's cold outside, but I've got the wood burning stove going here in the garage, and today we're going to be doing something to the old Volvo station wagon, and that is this, the driver's side CV axle. Now look, you can get CV boot kits for these things. In my case, I've got a tear in my outer boot. You can get a boot kit for about 20 bucks and swap it out, but this whole remanufactured axle was $44 with free shipping, so not really worth it to take it apart, take it all down, clean it all out, repack it, put it all back together again, labor-wise, when you can just replace the whole thing. I'm going to show you step-by-step how to do this. This is going to be the same for any 2001 to 2007 Volvo S60, V70, or XC70. They're all the same, and really it's going to be awfully similar for S80s, XC90s, and cars that are newer and older than the one that I'm going to show you on. There's just a few tricks to it, but not many. So the first thing we're going to have to do is pull off the tire, the driver's side tire. There are two ways to get the axle out. I'm going to be going through the bottom. You can also go through the top. So if you're doing this on the ground at home, going through the top sometimes is a whole lot easier than trying to go through the bottom. Doing it through the top, sometimes you need to do an alignment afterwards, and so that's why I'm going to be doing it through the bottom on this car. But let's go ahead. I am using a mid-rise lift for this, but you don't have to use a lift to do this job. It's something you can easily do with a set of jack stands at home, and I hope you will give it a shot. Let's start. All right, so like I said, the first thing we're going to have to do, we've got to remove the tire on this side. This is non-negotiable. You do have to pull this off and do the rest of this work. I'm using an air gun. You don't have to. Break the wheels loose, or break the lug nuts loose before you raise the car up on jack stands. And you can do this, all the work I'm going to do today, you can do without any kind of power tool. And now's a great time to point out that this is a nasty job. The grease, if it's a bad boot, has been slinging grease all over the place. It's going to be on the inside of the rim. It's going to be all around here. And you can actually, well, maybe not because of the shading, but it's all slashed up on here. It's going to be a real good mess. Like I said, there's two ways. Let me go ahead and get the camera a little closer in here. So there are two ways to go about getting this axle out, and here it is hidden back here. You can't really see it. The first way is through the top. To do that, you're going to remove your caliper bracket, which are two 14mm bolts, one on the top, one on the bottom. You're going to hold that and attach it up here. And then you're going to take off your two axle bolts. On some models, you have to take this wire right here, which is our speed sensor, ABS wheel sensor. You take the 10mm bolt that's hidden down here out, slide it up out of the way, and you can get to it. I'm going to be going through the bottom, and that is to take the one bolt down here out, and I'm going to move the camera so you can see everything I'm about to do. But I'm going to remove that one, I think it's an 18. I'm going to pull the bottom of this out. Everything else will stay the same, and I'll be able to slide my axle out through the bottom. Once we have the wheel off, I've got the camera in closer up here, we got to take out this. This is our axle bolt, and that's going to be a 14. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. If you're doing this on an earlier car, that would be an axle nut, and it's a whole lot bigger. I think it's a 36. Once I get that out, I actually will push with my thumb to make sure that this is not stuck in the splines. In this case, it's not, which is great news. We can move on. All right, this is our control arm, and the bolt we're going to be taking out is this one right here. It is a nut. It is 18mm. Once we get that loose, we're going to pry down. We're going to use a pry bar, pry down on this, and push out, and that's going to get our ball joint here free from the control arm. Once that's free, we can move this way out of the way, the whole assembly here, and that gives us all the room we'll need to remove our axle. There we go. Now with that nut removed, sometimes this is not going to be stuck in there. Other times you might have to tap on it with a hammer before it'll let loose. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a couple whacks here before trying to pry down on it. Okay, once we have beat on this a few times, hopefully it's loose. Yeah, I can feel it actually wobbling around in there, so I know that it's free. It's not going to be stuck when I try to remove it. I'm going to grab right here, and there is a spot. You can see my fingers coming through the top. And I have a very large pry bar. That is the best way to go about removing these, but there are other ways. You could take a tie strap and strap around here and then strap to the other side so you can squeeze it back and hold it down. Really, honestly, it's easier with two people. One person prying the other person pulling back on the axle itself. But what I'm going to do right now is give it a shot. Sometimes these control arms, the bearings are so preloaded, not the bearings, the bushings are so preloaded, they just don't want to drop down enough to slide our ball joint out. But in most cases, you can usually take it out this way. I've got my assistant here. Say hi, assistant.
Hi, assistant.
And she's going to be pulling out on this while I pull down on the control arm. It's not necessary to have two people, but it sure does help. So let's do this. You're going to be pushing in on the stub of the CV joint while pulling out on the whole spindle. Ready? And this might take 1 or 2 tries. Give it a shot. There you go. There you go. Let go. And that is it. Let go. Okay. So now we have released the ball joint from the lower control arm, and I now have room to get this axle snuck out sideways. So let me reposition the camera, and that is exactly what we're going to do. See, I told you this wasn't a hard job. All right, it's a little bit of a weird angle here, but this is just to show you what I'm doing. I've rotated this as far out as I can. You can see I can release that axle, and now I can slide it off out to the side here like so. All right, so the last thing we need to do in order to finish this is we need to gut up underneath the car. We're going to use that same pry bar, and we're going to pop this out of where it's hiding right now. It's stuck. There's a little snap ring, and here's a picture of it here, that holds that inner axle or the inner CV joint into the transmission. So we got to pop that free. It can feel a little hairy doing it too, but let's do that. All right, I won't be able to show you it while I'm doing it, but right here is where we're going to stick. This is our CV axle, and there is the transmission case. Right here, I'm going to stick a pry bar in and pop, and it's going to send the whole thing forward. Can't have the camera here while I'm doing that. 2 reasons. First, there might be fluid that comes out here. I don't want to ruin my camera. And the second is I don't want to damage the camera by accidentally whacking it if something goes a little goofy. But there it is. You can see it right there. And this can be done on the ground with a jack stand. I've done them for friends out in their yards. It's a whole lot easier when you got it up in the airways, but certainly you don't need to have that much leverage to pop these loose. And that's it. We'll go ahead. Gonna go ahead and slide this out. And there she is. And you can see that outer boot's done for. A little bit of rust built up here, but that's that snap ring right there. That snap ring is what's holding that in place. So when we put the new one in, I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on here, and I'm gonna pop that back into place, and that should be it for another hopefully 60 to 80,000 miles on these axles usually. Look at how rusty that old girl is. Still came out pretty easy. Let's move on. All right, here we are with our new one. One thing I will say, and it's a little hard to see here, but I'll try to show you. One thing I will say with this clip, it's got a space right there, right? When I install it, I kind of want that space to be right at the bottom. And I don't know why it is, but that kind of helps it just pop back into place, because you don't want to do is end up having that thing get a little sideways. And then you'll hammer on it trying to get it back into place, and it just won't go in there. But as you can see, or maybe you can't see, I've put a light coat of lube on there, so it should slide back in fairly easily. There you can see in there. So there's where I was prying on it. No damage to the seal or seal area. This whole area is dry, and that's a great thing. Inside here is where our splines are. You can spray a little oil in there if you want to make sure that she's not going to seize up, after the fact. But in this case, it looks pretty darn good, so I think we're ready to go back together with it. There she goes. All right. And I didn't use any hammers or anything. I was just getting it seated there. And so that's all there is to it. It seems a little sketchy doing that, but it works. Now we're back to putting it back together on the outside. And this is a little trickier. Again, I'm going to use an assistant for this part, but it's not absolutely necessary to do so. Same rules apply, though. I'm going to put a little lube here and a little lube on the splines for the axle itself, and we'll be back together in no time. All right, we're ready to go back in. I've got the back part of the CV axle already back in. I've laid this here on top of the control arm, and I've got it somewhat lined up with the hole. The last thing you want to do is pull forward on it, because what you'll end up doing is taking apart either the inside or outside CV joint. You'll actually pull it apart, the balls will fall into the boot, and you have just created a nightmare. So just kind of set it in there while making sure not to pull forward on it at any time. The idea here is that once we pull down on this control arm enough to get our ball joint back over that into that hole, that everything will kind of squeeze together, and if it's lined up correctly, the splines will go right back through the spindle. So again, I've got my assistant. Say hi, assistant.
Hi, assistant.
And she's going to be pushing everything back into place as I pull down. You can do this yourself. I used to do this myself. It's so much easier with a second hand. So let's go ahead and do it. I'll pry down with the pry bar. Are you ready?
We'll see.
That's it. It is back in place. Oh, look at the goo that got on the new axle. But no damage to the axle. Everything looks great. So it's time to reinstall everything. Piece of cake job, really, right? We're going to put that back on there. That's our ball joint nut. Where is that nut? There it is. It's beveled. The bevel faces up. You don't want to go crazy on tightening this down either. This just kind of goes in. It doesn't require hammer time. It just what's the meme on mechanic forums now is Ugga-Duggas. It's just one Ugga-Dugga. There you go. Maybe that was 3 Ugga-Duggas, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let's move the camera. We'll tighten up the axle. And, dude, it's time to put the tire back on. Piece of cake. I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 2. You can definitely do this. You come to me, about $385, I think, is the last one of these I did for a customer. A whole lot cheaper to do this yourself. $44 for that part. Let's move on. All right, here we are with our CV axle bolt. We got that going through there. Start that by hand. Tighten that up again. That's it. Ready to remount our tire. Once I've got all these started, I'm going to tighten these down. Look, Volvo spec is 80 foot-pounds. I've had some problems with wheels coming loose because of rust issues. I'm going to go with 100 on these. Choose your own adventure on that. I go by the book normally, but just having known this car as long as I have, I know that 80 just doesn't cut it. And so that's it. What did that take? Even with taking my time to get the camera set up and get the lighting and try to make it as knowledgeable and as good a video as I can, this took far less than an hour. It actually pays, I think it's either 0.8 or 1.2 on these cars. An amateur who has never done something like this before could easily have this done in an hour and a half, and that includes setting it up on jacks and jack stands, wheel removal, and all the rest. I'm Eric, the owner of Farpoint Farms Restorations and Repairs. I hope this video helped you if you own a Volvo, or really this is pretty much the same job on any car. I post these specifically for the model, but this is kind of a basic how-to on any model of car, how to get something like this apart and back together again. I guess that'll do it for today, my friends. If you liked the video, I hope you'll like and subscribe, because this is the new channel. This is the channel. This is where most of my newer content is going to be, and I hope you'll follow me along with that adventure here at Farpoint Restorations and Repairs. Take care.